Hello, welcome to the Talking City podcast. We're talking all things Manchester City, coming to you from the Manchester Evening News. My name's Joe Bray, joined by Simon Bajkowski. And Simon, do you say back to winning ways after a draw? But we've gone from the Arsenal game, which was quite tight, nervy. The sort of reaction to it was a bit negative, possibly. And now City are back and playing wonderful football and pushing aside Aston Villa. It was a lot has changed in a week, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Pep was asked afterwards, are you hitting the best form at the right time? And he was like, I thought a few days ago we were out of the title race. Yeah. I think the thing was if City didn't win on Wednesday, they were out of the title race. And you felt that kind of without knowing Arsenal and Liverpool's results, but Arsenal and Liverpool won, so City really needed to win. They sort of started off really confidently and scored and then conceded a sort of nothingy goal, another poor goal to concede defensively. And you're kind of thinking, is our City going to get back in it and, get the win that they need? And they did. And it was, a really good performance. And I think that just kind of, should kick them on ahead of Saturday. And I think as much as anything, winning without De Bruyne and Haaland might not be the way to go in the long term, or it might be. But the fact that they did it kind of sends its own message that, they don't need these two stars to do everything for them.
Because if you're looking at the fixtures, you would say, okay, maybe if you're going to rest them, maybe rest one against Villa, one against Palace, or both against Palace. Yeah. You would say that Villa is the more difficult game, especially considering how well Villa played in the
and also circumstance. It's no good beating Palace if you've not beaten Villa and you're out of the title race.
It felt like a big selection call.
I can't remember Haaland being dropped or rotated at any other time in his City career, and it was important because Guardiola kind of made the point afterwards. He wasn't directly asked about Haaland, but he said, we played loads better today because so many bodies were in the final third, like Foden and Lewis and Doku and Grealish and Bernardo. They were all pushing up to help Alvarez, where he said against Arsenal, nobody was. Yeah. And Haaland can't score if he's on his own in the final third up against two of the best centre-backs in Europe. But so he was sort of keen to make the point that City weren't better because they didn't have Haaland. And in the first half, you're saying, well, they're kind of playing better, but the final ball that De Bruyne might deliver and Haaland might finish is missing.
Yeah.
And it was, De Bruyne and Haaland are there for their individual moments of brilliance, and it was two virtuoso performances from Foden and from Rodri that really got City over the line. So it was still kind of like those individual world-class abilities that did it. It just wasn't Haaland and De Bruyne. But the fact that it wasn't Haaland and De Bruyne is important, I think, because, whether everyone's been waiting for them to kick on. And, they showed what they could do against Luton when they just blew everyone away. And everyone's been waiting for that. And other teams have been waiting for that. And maybe City players and City staff have even been guilty of sort of waiting for that, and it's not happened, and it felt important that Guardiola said, these two are not playing tonight, the rest of you have to go and win the game. And they did.
But they kind of have been doing that all season, haven't they? De Bruyne's been out for a long time, Haaland's had his spells out. They've not been dropped for sort of rotation purposes, but they haven't been in the team the whole time.
No, well, there were 2 months without both of them, and it felt rewound in time to when we were watching them between kind of January and February, about Alvarez looking much better as a 9 than he does as an 8 or a 10, and Foden kind of bossing things basically. If City do get over the line or whatever happens in City season, it will be remembered sort of far more for kind of the team that was out there on Wednesday night than for De Bruyne and Haaland's contributions, I think.
And we've always seen City as they've got lots of options up front, but it has always been when Haaland's fit, he starts. When De Bruyne's fit, he starts. So if they can do that and say, listen, these guys aren't playing to their best, like De Bruyne didn't have his best game against Arsenal, like you say, Haaland was a bit isolated, they can change it up and say you've got to be better.
Yeah, and I think we spoke about it on the podcast on Monday. I was surprised. Well, I wasn't surprised how much focus there was on Haaland post-match once Roy Keane had said what he said.
Yeah.
But I was surprised that so many takeaways from the Arsenal game was, well, Haaland's rubbish, because it was more about the service.
Yeah.
And, you know, Pep was saying after Wednesday night, he was like, I was concerned after Arsenal because I'm concerned when we don't create chances.
Yeah.
When we create chances, I have no problems at all with sort of how my team looks, and the creation of chances was sort of in a significant way down to De Bruyne not supplying Haaland, you know, also Foden and Bernardo, but De Bruyne is kind of chief creator when he's on the pitch, and he didn't create anything. So there was a big moment on Sunday when kind of Foden came off, and plenty of people thought that De Bruyne should have been off and Foden moved to the middle. So I kind of expected more of the talk to be about, is it time for Foden to take over from De Bruyne, which has been threatening a bit through the season, like you say. So I was surprised there wasn't more of that. And then, you know, after Foden does what he does on Wednesday night against Villa, that will only kind of get louder.
It's I think Foden is having one of those seasons where he's saying, I'm gonna take this. This is gonna be the time. I think it's a bit ahead of schedule, isn't it? That even in, I'm thinking October, November, Guardiola was saying, he's still not ready to play in the middle. He's still not perfect. He's still got a lot to learn. And now he's bossing games and he's winning games. And when he plays in that number 10, he's scoring a couple of hat tricks, but he's scoring important goals as well.
Yeah, it's hard because we've all known Phil and his potential for so long that we have been waiting for it, and he was so good in that 2020-21 season. Like, you know, City played Dortmund in the Champions League quarters, and Haaland and Bellingham were in the Dortmund team, and Foden was a class above. You expected him to kick on, and then he didn't really. After that, I think this is his best. It's his best goal scoring season, but his previous best was that year. And you're kind of thinking, when's he going to come on? And then he moves to the middle a bit more this season, but does he really? Southgate's still not really having him in the middle, and you know, he gave away that penalty against Palace in December, and Guardiola was like, he's not got what it takes yet to be ready in the middle. Mm-hmm. It was interesting hearing Foden after the game talking about not always being all-out attack and learning to play those different rhythms, and
that's what Guardiola's been asking for so long.
And whether, you know, Foden probably thinks he can do it more than Guardiola thinks he can do it, but Guardiola thinks he can do it a lot more than he did even in December. You know, if you're talking the story of City's January to where they are now in April, Foden has been the reason why they're still in contention to win everything.
I think it's also positive that they don't have to rely on De Bruyne and Haaland as much. They did last season, and they sort of ran De Bruyne into the ground to the point where he was coming off in a Champions League final again. Yeah,
and someone pointed out to me the other at the Villa game that they said, you know, it helped City last season that most of Haaland's 52 goals came sort of before the start of April, and most of Gundogan's goals came after April.
Yeah.
It was sort of like, as Haaland's goals dried up, up stepped another player. And, you know, watching the Netflix documentary and seeing the Arsenal game, there was a lot of chat around Gundogan and Mahrez, these two big kind of match winners, big personalities, big characters, big game players that City haven't managed to replace. But up has stepped another big game player in Foden this year, to you know, go some way to replacing what they've lost. So, you know, City will hope that Haaland and De Bruyne can fire them to glory, but if they don't, then they do have another kind of guy who's put his hand up enough times that they can rely on him doing it.
And it was Foden who came on in that Champions League final for De Bruyne and played very, very well as well.
Yeah, he's going to score one of those goals as well. Like, there was the one in the Champions League final where he dribbles into the box, shot. He had another one just like it on Wednesday, and he, like, so often he does that move, and then it just kind of ends. But
I feel like he does the hard bit, and then the crowd like, oh my goodness, this
yeah.
And I don't know whether it thinks about it too much.
Yeah, but then, Wednesday was also, confidence boosting for his finishing, because some of those finishes are good. And, sometimes it needs things like that. His third goal got a lot of comparisons to Wayne Rooney's against Newcastle, and Grealish said it to him on the pitch at the time, where he's just like, no, I'm not having that. This is going in the net. And they kind of help to remind you what a talent Foden is.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're all guilty of kind of talking about, because this is a guy that has got like incredible potential, unbelievable potential. Like, I think he could be Ballon d'Or winner. So we're all kind of thinking of how good he could be. And I think when you're constantly in that frame, you never kind of appreciate how good he is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Pep said a few weeks ago he's been the best player in the Premier League.
Yeah.
And you're looking at it and you think, if you vote him for the Premier League's best player, like, especially if City go on and win the title, but like, he's got to be up there, and he can still get better and better, but his level is one of the best players in the world already.
I can't argue at all. We'll talk a bit more about Foden and where to get the best out of all those attackers who don't quite fit at the moment.
Is this for City or England?
Whatever you want, we can talk about that. 4 points from these two games, probably the minimum City would have wanted. Not perfect, but when you look sort of a few days past, the performance against Arsenal was very disciplined and tight. Mm-hmm. The performance against Villa was a bit more attacking and showed what we expect of City. It was the first win against a top 5 team, I think the 7th attempt, which sort of shows why City aren't leading at the moment.
Yeah.
But Guardiola will be happy with how the week's gone, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think we sort of said 4 points was necessary, and I think you would extend that and say 7 points, including Palace, is necessary. Because I do think if they get, we spoke about it a bit on Monday, but if they beat Palace Saturday lunchtime, it will be big for them because it's such a tight turnaround, and it will be kind of like, yes, we can do it despite all the things against us. But also, Arsenal are at Brighton on Saturday night, Liverpool are at United on Sunday. City go into Saturday afternoon top of the league, and it asks more questions of those teams than City have asked in a while. And it was still feeling like City haven't quite been the outstanding team that they could be or that they were last season. But all they can do while they're not is keep being there.
Yeah.
And as long as they're there in the mix, then they've got a huge chance. The Arsenal game was a bit drab, a bit disappointing, but going into it, everyone said it's important not to lose, and they didn't lose. And
I think Arsenal are at a point now where they've got to catch Liverpool, and that's a massive challenge in itself, but they've also got City coming behind. Sandwiched in between really good teams. I think their best chance is being top, but I'm not sure they'll be back top again.
I think Arsenal's running is the toughest, and I think for all the credit that they deserve for their point at the Etihad, will they regret, or will the narrative even switch to will they regret not going for it? Because they didn't really go for it.
Oh, they played for a point, didn't they?
They played for a point. They got a point. They didn't play to win the league.
No.
Had they beaten City, that would have been a huge statement, and it wasn't. And maybe it was a big statement internally to get a point when they've been beaten at the Etihad every year. Guardiola's been there, but it wasn't as big as it could have been, and maybe it needed to have been if they were going to go on and win the league. But that is it. It doesn't even need them to think it was kind of a missed opportunity. It only needs a question to start coming into the narrative as the games come on for that to sort of enter their heads and it be an issue.
And was it this time last year they were quite a lot more points? Was it 8 points?
Yeah. And
City 1 point behind now. It's not the end of the world at all.
But also I think that will come on now for Arsenal rather than City. I don't think anyone you might talk about City's performance against top 5 sides as a missed opportunity. Maybe which game was it? Which game did they draw recently when they had the chance? It wasn't Brentford. It was It was a home game. Chelsea.
Yes,
Chelsea, they drew at home when they should have won.
Hey, they're a very good team, Chelsea, as United find out.
I think City's home form is probably the reason why they might not end up winning the league, but they don't have anything really to say about that Arsenal game, whereas Arsenal probably more questions from it. So if City can, end this week with a win, they will be absolutely delighted.
I think, especially seeing how Guardiola has reacted to certain results from last year in this documentary. You can start to translate that into this season, and I think he'll be very happy with where it's gone.
We remember last year when they beat Everton at Goodison in May, and then I think Arsenal got battered by Brighton, and it was suddenly like, City can win the league without even playing again. And then Arsenal lost to Forest, and they did, but it just like suddenly opened up for them. And a bit like, to put it in a different context, Phil Foden hits his free kick through the Villa wall and it goes in. And someone tweeted me and was like, is that brilliant or lucky? You're like, well, it's lucky because the wall shouldn't do that. If the wall behaves as it should behave, then it's not cleared the wall. I'm not having this, someone showed an Alvarez free kick that the wall was doing similar. How City have noticed that and picked up on it. No. I think Foden just hit a poor free kick, but it went in. If you get the ball on target and the other team doesn't do the job, then you win. And if you win your games and the other teams don't, then you win. So City are in a place.
Liverpool scored a goal where the ball cannoned in off Nunes closing down the keeper. It's
precisely, So if you can win your games, it puts the onus on the other teams to do what they should do or what people expect them to do. And not everyone can live up to expectations all the time.
Well, let's leave it there for now. We'll be back after a short break and we'll be discussing just how do you get all these good players in one starting 11. Hello, welcome back to the Talking City podcast. We've discussed Phil Foden's brilliant performance against Aston Villa and how they did it without Kevin De Bruyne and Erling Haaland. You would expect those two players to come back in City's strongest 11, probably against Crystal Palace, probably against Real Madrid. But that means that Foden's moving out to the wide areas again. We saw Doku continue his promising run of form where his performances are slowly getting better and better. I think it's his first assist in 21 games, I think I worked out, which is more reflective of his form since that Bournemouth game. But he's getting that end product back. We saw Grealish return to the side and look a bit more like the Grealish we know. Bernardo looked quite good in that sort of number 8 position. How do you fit all these players back in? And I suppose a question that's also been asked in the sort of reaction to the Villa game is Phil Foden ready to be that number 10 without Kevin De Bruyne? We asked this question on a panel piece we did, and I think the consensus was he is ready, but you can't leave De Bruyne out. So I think you've got to compromise, and I think Foden is better coming inside from a wide position.
Yeah.
Because I don't think De Bruyne can play anywhere else, and Guardiola said as much, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think it depends on form, because I think if people are in form, that it doesn't matter as much where people play. But I also think that the best formation, the best team for me would be Rodri, De Bruyne and Foden I think the only way you get De Bruyne and Foden in the middle is if you have Bernardo and Grealish out wide.
Okay, yeah.
Because I think they have... Bernardo can kind of drop in alongside Rodri. Maybe helped as well by a John Stones or a Rico Lewis popping forward to support Rodri, and Grealish as well is so good defensively that you kind of can allow Foden and De Bruyne to not have as many defensive responsibilities. Although Foden was great on Wednesday, sort of getting back and tracking and sort of winning challenges in the air or with his feet on the edge of City's box. So, he can do it more than De Bruyne. But I think that is the best way. I thought Doku was much improved defensively, actually. He was he won quite a lot of Guardiola applause for kind of charging back and winning the ball back and being dogged whenever he He lost the ball. Still needs to work on keeping the ball.
Yeah. I do think just slowly the last couple of months he is.
But he's getting it.
He's
getting it, and his assist was much more, a City assist.
Yeah.
It was an accurate pass along the floor.
Well, just a blind ball into the box. Yeah.
Which would suggest he's getting it, and similar to Josko Gvardiol, that we've sort of been iffy about all season, and he's played really well the last two games, and Guardiola said on Wednesday, he was like, he started off like giving too many balls away, taking too many risks with the ball. I just need him to play the simple pass. My defenders have to be simple. I'm not asking him to score 3 goals, just pass the ball. Simple pass, don't give it away. And you think, like you can see why that would take time. And not to compare, but I think an Arsenal fan sort of wondering about whether Zinchenko still makes too many risks from left back, and he kind of did, but he made up for it with other qualities. But that is you can see why people would take risks, because risks aren't a bad thing. John Stones take risks, De Bruyne takes risks, Foden takes risks, but there's a right time and place for it, and it's taken Gvardiol time to learn that, and I think it's taken Doku time, and he had an explosive impact when he arrived at City, a bigger impact than anyone thought, and that is perfectly possible because of his talent. But I think to have kind of lasting success in the City team, you've got to be more in tune with what everyone else is doing, and it takes time. And
I think I'm quite excited to see how those two, Guardiola and Doku, will be next season.
Yeah.
You always see that first year of adaptation, and the second year they kick off.
Yeah, and Nunes as well, really, because Nunes is another interesting case. So, Doku, I believe he was bought to play on the right, and sort of his first game against Fulham was on the right, and he was so shy and timid and didn't do anything. It was when Guardiola was still in Barcelona having his recuperation from back surgery. But he's got a lot I potential in a lot of ways in which he can help the City.
I think the next game he was at West Ham and he tore them apart and changed the game. And
I don't think yet he should be in the strongest starting 11, but I think he's a valued member of the squad already, and potentially a perfect substitute to come on and win the game. You saw it with Pep's speech before the Champions League finals in the Netflix doc, and he sort of names his 11, and then he's like, right, these 3 players are going to come on to win the game, these 3 players are going to come on to keep things steady, and these 3 are going to come on to defend the lead. And it's like, Doku absolutely could be a player to come on and win the game. And I think it was Anfield, wasn't it, when he came on with Kovacic, and suddenly City were a lot more stable. And it seems counterintuitive to bring someone like Doku on, and his ball retention does have to be better than it was on Wednesday night, but it's possible, and he's showing more possibilities the more times he plays. So it's a really positive night for him.
I think Doku will be quite useful in the Luton game, so between the Champions League 2 legs and other games like that, where you're probably looking ahead 2 or 3 games. Guardiola says he never does that, but clearly he does.
Yeah.
I think he will be one of those who will play a very important part in the title chase, because he's allowing others to get a rest, but also winning games at the same time. Yeah.
And on the sort of flip side of that, the other flank, I thought Jack Grealish was tremendous.
Yeah.
He was properly fired up for it, as you would expect for a player being booed by the supporters of his former club, who he got.
We've been waiting for that, haven't we?
He gave them 100 million, but we have been waiting for it. And I was speaking to another journalist on Wednesday, who sort of is of the belief, or had written a piece saying Grealish had a bad season, and
I don't think I buy that. I've seen it, and I've seen that his England place is at risk, but.
Exactly.
He's not been as good, but he's still been
my response would be that he's had an injured season.
Yeah.
Because we've not seen anywhere near the best of him because he's been injured, really. I know he's had his own issues where he's not been at the best when he's been fit, when he could have been, but I think more of his kind of lack of progress this season has been down to injuries. And you think about kind of December when I think he scored in 3 league games in a row for the first time in his career.
Yeah.
And then his house got broken into, and then he was sick and lost his place in the team, and then got injured after 20 minutes against Copenhagen, where he was brilliant, and then came back against Luton, and City scored 4 in 40 minutes, and then he got injured. And I sort of feel like the moment when he was ready to sort of get motoring, it broke down for him, or his body didn't do it. And when you see him play like he did on Wednesday, he's just so important. He does have his own tempo, and everyone else has to fit around that. When he has the ball at his feet, everyone has to move around him, and City just don't have anyone like that when he's not fit.
I think to round this up, I'm going to give you my best attack for City. I think you have Foden on the right, and I know he's better in the middle, but I think you allow him to move inside. Yeah, because I like Bernardo in the middle as well, as sort of a number 8.
Right.
I think he gives you a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that will be quite useful, because we were talking a few podcasts ago about Kovacic being that sort of balance to Rodri. I think Bernardo can do that, and it's similar to your formation. They can move around, can't they? But I just think Foden has the versatility to move around, and he's playing in such good form that he can affect games wherever he plays.
Yeah, I think back to that Copenhagen away performance when I thought they were just really good, and you could say, oh, well, it's Copenhagen, but they're still a good team in the last 16 in the Champions League. They knocked United out to get there, and City have played most of the top 6, top 5 rivals, and they got Spurs away, but other than that, they're done. So, they won't play a team as good as Copenhagen again this season, and I can't fully remember the formation, but I just remember Foden and De Bruyne wherever they were, just combining to brilliant effect and things like that. So it's kind of what I was saying, when everyone is in form, it doesn't matter so much because they can be so fluid. And we've seen City become kind of more fluid than ever. It started off as like an inverted fullback or a false 9, and then it became 2 false 9s, and now it's just, there is so much change across the pitch.
I think last season we had a definite, this is the starting 11 that's going to win the treble.
Yeah.
And no one could, Mahrez couldn't get in it, and Foden couldn't get in it.
And everyone had their set positions.
I think this year it's going to be more dependent on who they're playing.
Yeah. But there's plenty of options. But as I was driving home on Wednesday, there was a big debate about, Foden in the England side, and who do you leave out, and do you play him on the wide or do you play him in the middle? And it's at that point now where you sort of the mind that you can't leave Foden out. And I think if I'm picking the City team, Foden's name comes before De Bruyne's.
I think that's fair. I just also think you can't leave out
De
Bruyne as well.
Yeah.
This is why Guardiola's paid the money to win the treble again.
Yeah.
Let's come back after another break, and we'll look ahead to Crystal Palace and a couple of other things that have popped up this week. Hello, welcome back to the Talking City podcast. Before we get on to Crystal Palace, Simon, I'm going to ask you for the millionth time, should City regret selling Cole Palmer after his hat-trick against Manchester United? Played very, very well again. Yes.
No, they should not regret. It's the
same answer, isn't it?
It's the same answer. He is showing a level that he hadn't shown for too long at City, but he's also getting opportunities that he probably wouldn't get at City. He's also getting loads of penalties. Not to do him down, but how are Chelsea winning so many penalties? It seemed, because has he got 16 goals?
16 goals
now in the league, and
assists.
How many are penalties?
That would be good if I knew that.
Must be getting on for 7 or 8, I would think.
But he seems quite confident at penalties. But
he's
never going to get it.
Well, that's how you know he's not a City player, because he's good at penalties. But he's just I am delighted that Cole Palmer is doing as well as he is. I think Chelsea will feel like it is a steal at 43 million.
8 penalties he scored.
8 penalties out of 16, right. Whereas I think Foden's 0 out of 14. Yeah, 8. It's a bargain for Chelsea, and particularly when Chelsea have spent so much money so badly. Like, it sticks out like a sore thumb, Palmer at 43 million, and 42.5 if we're splitting hairs. Can you split hairs over $500,000? That sounds terrible, doesn't it? The world of big business. I think, I think City can have regrets over the way it happened, because, you know, I sort of remember being in Athens at the start of the season for the Super Cup, and Palmer had scored the goal that took them to penalties, and it was as they were kind of looking to bring Doku in for Mahrez, and if you're looking for a Mahrez replacement, there is no one better than Palmer in terms of style, but he hadn't done it enough over 18 months, and 18 months is a long time.
He scored 16 Premier League goals this season, but he hadn't scored any Premier League goals for City.
Yeah, and even kind of last season, his best games were at the end of the season once the title had already been won, so it was kind of like in a reduced pressure environment. You know, as it happened, he then turns up in the Community Shield and the Super Cup and does really well. And everyone wanted him to do really well, but I remember, because I was in the press conference doing Pep, and Pep was like, well, he wants to leave.
Yeah.
But he won't be leaving on loan, he'll be leaving permanently if he leaves. And it was like, right. And at the same time, Palmer was in the mix zone saying, well, I'd like to stay, but if they bring someone else in, I'm going to have to look for other opportunities. And, you know, it's a shame, because he is such a Pep player in terms of his performance and his skill set, but it just shows how much about being a player in this City squad is about mentality. And that's not to kind of diminish Palmer's mentality, just to say that his way of working isn't quite the same as what Pep's way of working is.
I also think he suits a Chelsea system better than City's. It's quite end-to-end and transitional. Yeah. And he's very good at that. He has space to run into and take on a defender and drop the shoulder. He doesn't always have that. He's got to do it from a standing start at City. I think that's why he never really came on and influenced a game. But you look at Oscar Bob, he's influenced more games coming on than Palmer ever did. And that's it. Whatever kind of regret City can have, they are so well set up that they can move on. And I would say City have missed Gundogan and Mahrez this season. They haven't missed Palmer. We were just talking about the best attack. He wouldn't have featured in that conversation.
And you know, he might have done, because Pep's way will have been, I'm bringing Doku in, but you play well enough every week that you keep him out every week. And he will play games. He'll come in sometimes, but you have to play well enough so that I always turn to you when it matters. And that is just the way that he operates, and it is a way that Palmer didn't want to operate, because he wanted a kind of clearer path and a different environment. And I think there are kind of regrets on all sides, but at the same time, everyone's moved on and everyone's happy and everyone's doing their thing. And I think when it gets into the sort of reductive, he scored a goal, so City must regret selling him. City would have killed for a player with 16 Premier League goals, but then if 8 of those are penalties that City wouldn't have won, or Palmer wouldn't have taken, then they would have loved a player with 8 goals. But then he's only got 8 goals from playing 25 starts, 26 starts. How many City players have started that many games? Not many. So
26 games he's played. He's actually played less than Haaland and got more goals and assists in terms of combined goal involvements.
Right.
That says, obviously, Haaland's been out for a bit. But I think, the penalty point is... so... a legitimate one as well.
I just think... I can see why it gets raised all the time, but I think it's a bit of a red herring.
I think over time it'll come to be a success story. That City produced such a good player, and he was just sort of... I don't want to say the word average, but he wasn't incredible at City, and now he's gone on and he's in line to be an England player.
I think so. I think he will also be the player that hurts City the most. He scored against them. He scored against them home and away.
I think so.
I'm
not sure he scored at the Etihad.
not sure he scored at the Etihad, but definitely did at Stamford Bridge. Maybe an assist at the Etihad. Certainly involved. I think, when Sancho came to United and everyone was like, City are going to regret this. Yeah. And then it's like, actually, they've made 20 million out of a player that hasn't really made them regret selling him. I think Palmer will hurt City more because I think he'll last more as a Premier League success because of the circumstances. But like you say, that will kind of show the progress that City's academy have made and the talents that they're able to identify. A lot of the coverage around, we're speaking about Palmer obviously because he scored a hat-trick as Chelsea beat United, and I think maybe it was one of our colleagues or someone else pointed out that there was a United fan in Cole Palmer ready for United to identify as a young boy and sign and bring through, and they didn't. He's been at City since he was 8. So, if you're talking about City regretting on Palmer, United might have more regrets.
And City have 42.5 million in the bank.
Yeah.
And UEFA Super Cup.
Yeah.
You'll never sing that. Segueing into the academy and sales, and the first time, I think I mentioned this, first time we both saw Cole Palmer was when he missed a penalty in the Youth Cup final. City are back in the Youth Cup final, beat Bristol City this week. They'll face Leeds. Don't know where it will be held.
Don't know where, don't know when.
Don't know when.
But we do know the teams.
But we do know it'll be Leeds, and Leeds had about 10,000 at Ellen Road, so you will expect that they'll bring a lot. That's just another, considering the under-21s haven't had the best of seasons, they sold a lot of players being injured in the first team. It's very good that there's another generation of under-18s that are
and a lot
games.
Of big change in the academy. Big change with academy director going, Jason Wilcox, who might be in the news at the minute. But Thomas Crooken coming in as academy director. They lost. Charlotte O'Neill moved over to the women's team. They lost key people in coaching, scouting, recruiting, like every possible aspect. And it feels like that has had a knock-on effect. But again, so much of the organisation is run so well that they're able to reach the FA Youth Cup final, which is the most prestigious competition in England to win.
And you talk to the coaches, and that's the one they want to win.
Yeah.
It's still got that aura about it.
Yeah, and City won it in 2008, and I spoke to Ben Mee about it, who sort of came through City's academy and didn't really feature for the first team, but he said, that memory of winning in the first team stadium, winning the FA Youth Cup is such like one of the most treasured memories of his whole career, and he's gone on to have a brilliant career. But a lot of players grow up wanting to win the FA Youth Cup, and a lot of it's if City win the FA Youth Cup, they'll be able to turn around and say our academy's done well this season. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm just trying to find the team that beat Chelsea in 2020 because I think there's a lot of recognisable names.
Cole Palmer was in it.
There, he was.
Yeah.
Morgan Rogers, who was in the.
Morgan Rogers. James Trafford wasn't in it, but was only not in it because he was with the first team.
And instead, Kieran Slicker.
Is it Ipswich?
Now, CJ Egan-Riley, who's
at Burnley.
Harwood Bellis, who's still on the books, but at Southampton. Luke Mbete, similar. Alpha Dion, he's gone back to Spain.
I think so, yeah.
Joe Hodges at Wolves. Palmer, obviously. Tommy Doyle is at Wolves. Delap is doing well at Hull. McAtee, Sheffield United. Morgan Rogers. There's a lot of Premier League players in there.
Yeah.
And that's only 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So it'll be very interesting to see the group who are there now.
Yeah.
Because they're not filled with big names.
No. And it did feel a bit like there were a lot of big names in that 2020 team. But only because they'd done so much at such a young age.
Yeah.
Palmer and Doyle and Delap and McAtee is a real kind of firebrand. I think Jayden Braff came off the bench as well.
He did. And Alex Robertson, who was doing well in League One.
Yeah. So yeah, you know,
substitute not used Oscar Bob.
There we are.
Samadozi, who's at Southampton.
Yeah. So packed with talent, and you're not going to get that every year. I remember talking to the sort of former academy head at City, Jim Cassell, who said like you expected like 4 or 5 to go on from the team, and there's a hell of a lot more there. So you know, if it's kind of irrelevant whether City win or not, because like they've got there, but you would like to think from that group of players that will play against Leeds that there's plenty of both first team potential for City, but also potential for bringing in money.
It seems like there's always different scorers as well throughout the rounds. There's Jalen Heskey's done well, Justin Abovido as well, and I think it was Ashton.
Glad you said that.
I've learned that.
He says with a very simple surname. There's plenty of talent, isn't there?
It's hopefully it'll be at the Etihad.
You'd like to think so. City, I think we both kind of agree that City aren't the best at promoting these kind of games. No. And it tends to, I mean, I feel like most of the rounds tend to be sort of around first team games, which is maybe unavoidable, but you know the final will be around a first team schedule because it has to be, because the first team schedule is so dense. I think it's got to be played by the
4th of May, but City are at home on that day and the women are at home on the Sunday, so it probably won't be on that weekend, but then it's...
Yeah,
it's whether they have it at the Academy Stadium or the Etihad is.
Yeah, and I mean, and again, like it would be nice to have it. The argument between having it at the main stadium or the Academy Stadium is one that kind of the women's team have had a lot, and you know would rather play in a full Academy Stadium than a sort of sparser main stadium. But you know, it's like you said, if Leeds are going to bring a lot, you need lots of City fans in to make it a home atmosphere. But you really need to do a lot of promotion because you know there isn't. I don't think many City fans will be across the academy team at all in the under-18s.
But you look at Arsenal held the final last year. They got about 15,000-20,000, I believe, and West Ham bought I think 7,000.
Yeah, and Arsenal
United had almost a full Old Trafford the year before.
Yeah, Arsenal brilliant for promoting the women's game as well. I think they've had back-to-back sellouts at the Emirates or something like that. So
it's not as simple as saying, just put it at the Etihad and fill it, because there's a first, like you say, the first team had to play there. And there's all the stuff going on with the fixtures, but it would be nice. I think, it will be an interesting one to follow, and when we know where it is, we'll obviously let you know, and we'll be covering that final, because it's not often they get into a Youth Cup final. I think it's
is this the first since 2020?
2020, yeah.
I think they got into one. They were in a lot of finals in the 10 years before that, but 2020 was the first one they won since 2008. So again, you look for sort of patterns, don't you, and records, and getting into so many finals and winning. And so if they won this year, it'd be 2 in 5, which is pretty.
And they've also got a
pretty good
Premier League Cup final against United away, and could still overtake United in the league, the 18s. So there's an unlikely treble on the cards. Back to the first team, who are chasing their own treble. What sort of team do you think we'll see at Palace? De Bruyne and Haaland back, or do you think they'll be rated? Full circle, this, isn't it?
You'd have to think De Bruyne and Haaland would come in, but then they've got Real Madrid on Tuesday night. So, you know, I thought it was very telling that kind of Rodri, Foden, I think Grealish and Bernardo all got subbed off on Wednesday night.
That's often an indicator, isn't it?
Yeah, and it was interesting talking to Rodri the other week about, because he'd said, I need to rest more back in summer. He'd said, I can't have the same season again. And and he's had the same season again. But he was talking about kind of learning to sort of take it a bit easier in the final 20 minutes of games once it was won.
Yeah.
And I mean, he got a rest, so he could actually put his feet up rather than just kind of like coasting through the final minutes. But you would kind of think all 4 of those players will play, plus De Bruyne and Haaland. Pep said after the game there would be a lot of changes.
Yeah.
There will be different players. But the thing is, they don't have different players. Do you want to risk John Stones? You know, John Stones playing or not depends on what the best plan is for him with Real Madrid.
Yeah, you don't want to throw him in cold against Real Madrid.
Yeah, maybe you do. Maybe you do. It all depends on kind of what is the best for his legs. But yeah, what you don't want to do is play him at Palace and then he gets injured and you think, oh, I could have saved him for Real Madrid. But you can't know when he will get injured. So I sort of feel like there will be changes and De Bruyne and Haaland will come in, but at the same time there can't be that many changes because they don't have a big squad.
And Palace, they've got an okay record, but it's never been easy.
Yeah, it's never been easy, and they've got a new manager.
It's never a straightforward game there.
Yeah, a new manager they seem to have improved under.
Yeah.
And City need to win this game or they're probably out of the title race, same as Villa. So you can't really afford to, say, oh, we'll chuck the Palace game and move on. I seem to think there was, in 2018-19 when City were neck and neck with Liverpool, I seem to think it was Palace before Tottenham, or maybe Palace was the in-between game with Tottenham in the Champions League quarter, and Pep prioritised that over the Tottenham first leg.
Yeah.
Played a stronger team in the league than he did in the Champions League, and City won the league but didn't win the Champions League tie. So yeah, it will be very interesting. But I think what we will almost certainly see is a lot of substitutions again.
Yeah, it feels like that. But I also think that's where you get to the 60 minutes and against Villa you can rest the players.
Yeah, it all depends on the match situation, yeah.
And there's an underlying thing which maybe we could talk about in the future is the goal difference, which is City trailing Arsenal by 10 and Liverpool by 4, and that's when you kind of need them to be putting the foot on the gas a little bit. Yeah. It's weighing up the fitness versus the goal difference as well. But you've got to be in that position to be winning comfortably enough to make that decision.
No, you don't want to Brendan Rodgers, Christian Bullet, do you? That was Crystal Palace. Wow, what a memory that was.
They always seem to have a say in the title.
Yeah.
They've always got some sort of contribution.
Yeah. And they've already taken points off City this season. So yeah, it won't be easy, and I kind of think City have given up on catching Arsenal's goal difference.
Yeah.
I think Liverpool's they maybe think they can catch, especially because Liverpool will have to drop points for them to catch them. So by nature, Liverpool's goal difference won't go up then. Got one goal on them in midweek, so
slowly but surely.
Slowly, yeah. Eight games to go.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm expecting a full strength team against Luton for the same reason.
Yeah. They just have to do what they can.
As they say, one game at a time. And that's what we'll do. We'll follow City at Crystal Palace at the weekend. You can follow us as we're down in South London. All the action as it happens and reaction throughout the weekend, and then looking ahead to Real Madrid. We'll be back next week. Give us a like and subscribe and a good 5-star review if you can. Follow us on all the usual podcast platforms. And we'll be back next week to preview Real Madrid.